Liberal Viewer presents.
So, welcome to the November 25th edition of Liberal Viewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me and Chong the cat here. Apparently, Chong does not really want to be up here the whole time, so I guess I will put him down and tell you that I picked out the dozen best, most newsworthy clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. I don't know. He doesn't. Oh, he's stuck to the carpet. Here you go. And I'm adding my media criticism and political commentary for what should be really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all today on my main topic: no FBI background checks for Trump's cabinet of Kakistocracy. Cabinet of Kakistocracy. See, I said it right this week. And this is an important issue because it's another norm that the Trump administration is breaking. Although, actually, I think once he's president, he may actually agree to the background checks from the FBI. If you may remember, a couple years ago, I made a video about how they snuck Brett Kavanaugh onto the Supreme Court, even though he was lying, by limiting the FBI background checks that they did on him. And one of the points I made, and something that's a fact, is that when the FBI does a background check on a presidential nominee, the client, the person who sets all the limits and scope of the background check, is the White House, the presidential administration. So that means if Trump were to sign those FBI background check uh, papers for his nominees now, it would be the Biden White House that would be doing the background check. So maybe he'll do it after he becomes president and fires Christopher Wray, who we appointed director of the FBI, with some new person who's more loyal. Maybe he'll start doing FBI background checks then, but it's actually quite a problem for some of the nominees. I'll particularly be talking about Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth, a little bit RFK Jr., but mostly those two. And I have short summaries of all the clips down in the video description, right below the video. That's why I'm pointing down there. And I also will be using the sources that you see down there. Also, under sources, I put a link to that April 2022 video, I think it was, where I talked about Joe Scarborough being wrong about Brett Kavanaugh. And I actually have a lot of inside knowledge into the whole Brett Kavanaugh history and his freshman year in college, and I don't want to go into all that again, but I do want to start with a political comedy clip, and this is just a very brief example of the dark humor you get from Democrats now that we're slouching our way into the Trump administration, I guess. Here's Senator Amy Klobuchar, after being introduced by Jon Karl, making one of those jokes over here.
To discuss that and more is Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar, coming to us from the Halifax Security Forum in Nova Scotia. Thank you, Senator, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And it's good to be in Canada. I have not moved here. I want to make that clear.
Yeah, so I guess some people are moving to Canada. I personally, if I were going to leave the United States because of Trump authoritarianism, I've been kind of looking into maybe New Zealand. I don't know. It's just sort of an abstract idea. Things would have to get a lot worse, but I have no confidence they're not going to get a lot worse. So maybe a joke, Amy Klobuchar, but I guess if you're from Minnesota, it's not that big a deal to move to Canada. And actually, ABC is where I'm getting my next clip. ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Jon Karl did the news summary. It's the longest of the news summaries. Specifically mentions the lack of FBI background checks, talks about all the Trump nominations, Matt Gaetz being out, Pam Bondi now being the nominee for Attorney General. And this one, one thing that I liked about this news summary, if you watch all the way to the end, they mention Sebastian Gorka, who's like pretty much a Nazi, who is apparently going to have a place in the Trump administration. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that news summary together over here.
Good morning. Welcome to This Week. As we come on the air this morning, Donald Trump has chosen nearly all of his cabinet nominees and senior White House staff, making his picks at a record pace and bypassing the typical vetting process. No FBI background checks yet for any of them. When Matt Gaetz dropped out as the nominee for Attorney General, it took Trump just a matter of hours to name a replacement. He seems like a president-elect in a hurry, ready to make an impact as soon as he is sworn in. If his choices are confirmed, Trump may have one of the most ideologically diverse cabinets in decades, with former Democrats, including Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, filling some of his most important roles. Trump has announced jobs for a half-dozen billionaires, including the world's wealthiest man, Elon Musk, who will head up what he's calling the Department of Government Efficiency. It may not be a team of rivals, but you might call it a team of billionaires. It's also a team of loyalists. The choices are, almost all of them, people who have demonstrated personal loyalty to Trump. And at least 5 of the picks he has announced so far work on air for Fox News. In a moment, we'll speak with a Republican senator who has spent a lot of time with Trump at Mar-a-Lago since Election Day. And I'll talk to a leading Democrat in the Senate about the coming battle over confirming Trump's nominees. But first, I spent several days around Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate this week, checking in on a transition unlike any we have ever seen. This week, Donald Trump dispatched his vice president-elect to escort some of his most controversial nominees around the Senate. He learned there are limits to what Senate Republicans will go along with. Early in the week, a top Trump lieutenant told me Senate Republicans would have no choice but to get in line or see their political careers go down. There's votes coming, and if you are on the wrong side of the vote, you're buying yourself a primary, the Trump advisor told me. And there's a guy named Elon Musk who is going to finance it. The president gets to decide his cabinet, no one else. That's just the way it is. As it turns out, that's not how it is. After just 8 days as Trump's nominee for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz dropped out because more than 4 Republican senators privately made it clear they just wouldn't vote for him, making his confirmation effectively impossible. And now there's intense scrutiny on Trump's pick for Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, who was selected with almost no vetting. He previously faced allegations that he denies of sexual assault. Some senators say he, at the very least, should go through an FBI background check before any confirmation hearing. To replace Gaetz, Trump moved in lightning speed, naming Pam Bondi as his choice for Attorney General within hours of Gaetz dropping out. Bondi had not previously been under consideration. She had never even been interviewed for the job until the day Trump announced her as the nominee. But Bondi has experience, 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. She's also a vocal Trump supporter. She's campaigned for him, advised him, and served on his defense team during the first impeachment trial.
They threw due process, fundamental fairness, and our Constitution out the window in the House proceedings. That's why we're here.
If they are all confirmed, the top 3 officials at the Justice Department will all be people who worked for Trump as lawyers for his defense. And a 4th nominee, John Sauer for Solicitor General, is the lawyer who argued the immunity case for Trump before the Supreme Court. The Trump transition team has offices right here in West Palm Beach. Those offices are staffed, but the real action is right over there in Mar-a-Lago, as job seekers know that the key to getting a job in the Trump White House or even in his cabinet might just be getting a little bit of FaceTime with Donald Trump at his club here in Palm Beach. Late Friday, Trump filled the biggest remaining cabinet job, naming billionaire hedge fund manager Scott Bessent as his choice for Secretary of Treasury. Bessent spent years working for Democratic mega donor George Soros, but he has also been a prolific fundraiser for Trump and a regular on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast. He also spoke at a Trump rally over the summer.
This is the Trump economy. This is the Trump stock market.
If confirmed, Bessent would be the first openly gay Treasury Secretary. Trump also nominated Russ Vought, another regular on Bannon's War Room, as the director of the Office of Management and Budget. He was an architect of the Project 2025 plan that the Trump campaign sought to distance itself from.
The president has to move executively as fast and as aggressively as possible with a radical constitutional perspective to be able to dismantle that bureaucracy and their power centers.
It's not an especially racially diverse group. Of the dozens of nominees and appointees Trump has announced so far, only one is black. NFL veteran and conservative commentator Scott Turner is Trump's choice to lead the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And perhaps the most controversial announcement Friday, Trump named right-wing commentator Sebastian Gorka as the White House Senior Director for Counterterrorism and National Security. Gorka was a big advocate of Trump's ill-fated Muslim ban. More recently, he has had this to say about how Trump should approach his first 30 days in office.
Department by department, you identify the two worst criminals, you arrest them, and you perp walk them out of the building in shackles like they did to Peter Navarro in front of the CNN cameras, and they stand trial.
And joining us now is Republican Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee.
And actually, we'll have a clip of Senator Bill Hagerty. And like I said, I thought it was good that ABC talked about Sebastian Gorka, and they called him a right-wing commentator and an architect of the Muslim ban. They didn't really talk about his flirtation with Nazi symbols from Hungary or whatever, and that I think is a criticism I have of a couple other parts of the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary there, and that they gave a lot of good information that aren't in the other news summaries, but then they didn't really tell you the implications so much. Like they mentioned a couple times in that news summary, no FBI background checks, but they don't mention, for example, one of the big implications of that is it's a crime to lie to an FBI agent. It's not a crime to lie to some private investigator hired by the Trump transition team, which is apparently who they're using for background checks right now. And I also liked how they showed the top 4 people at the Department of Justice. You saw, I took a screenshot of this. Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Emil Bovey or whatever, and then John Sauer, and they're all former Trump criminal defense attorneys, including Pam Bondi, who got into this scandal where she accepted a donation from a Trump foundation for her Florida Attorney General campaign, and then immediately, or then decided fortuitously not to join all these other attorney generals in suing Trump University. And that campaign contribution from a 501c3 foundation also is illegal. It was an illegal campaign because 501c3 corporations aren't allowed to make campaign contributions to partisan candidates. Something I know a lot about from my ACLU work. And the other part about that ABC didn't really mention is the kind of conflict and unprecedented conflict of a president having criminal defense attorneys with whom he has an attorney-client relationship as the top 4 people at the Department of Justice. I mean, that's way worse than JFK having RFK as his attorney general, which was actually outlawed in a nepotism statute after that. But the thing is, they all have attorney-client relationship. That means they have a duty to do what's in his interest, not necessarily what's in the country's interest. I don't know if they'll all be asked about that in their confirmation hearings, if they no longer have an attorney-client relationship directly with Trump, where they have a duty to work in his interest specifically. That's some of the things not discussed in the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary there, which, and I like the introduction there from Jonathan Karl, where I spent a few days around Mar-a-Lago finding out what they're doing, and I expected them to cut to like him in the bushes or something, but no, I guess he was he was just being a reporter there. I guess they're even letting ABC reporters in, or Jonathan Karl anyway. And I would juxtapose that to this next news summary, where you don't hear anything about the controversies. Like at the very end, the first, Shannon Bream's not there, so it's Gillian Turner in for Shannon Bream this week, and she starts with like a few random headlines, which, people are traveling for Thanksgiving. That's, I guess, breaking news. And UN climate, the UN climate conference, makes pledges for 2035, and then this rabbi who was killed in the UAE for some reason is a big story on Fox News. That sometimes I think these headlines say more about like Fox News than what is actually newsworthy. And then they have two different reporters, one with Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and that's the first reporter. And then they have Alex Hogan from Tel Aviv, first reporting on the Ukraine, which is another weird thing, kind of like Kevin Corke at the White House reporting on Biden's South American trip last week. But then Alex Hogan does talk about some stuff going on in Israel as well. In the Fox News report from Mar-a-Lago or Palm Beach or whatever, you'll see the reporter Bryan Llenas. At the very end, he says Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth are controversial, but never explains why. And you'll be probably not surprised to learn that nowhere in the entire Fox News program do you ever really find out what was so controversial about either Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard. And anyway, I pretty much pre-criticized the Fox News Sunday news summary, and I'll talk about it a little bit more after we watch it together over here.
Hello from Fox News in Washington. Let's kick off with the headlines right now. AAA is predicting a record 79 million travelers are going to hit the roads, the rails, and take to the skies this week for Thanksgiving. Stormy conditions are forecast right now for the West Coast early on in the week, with wintry weather in the very busy Northeast corridor by next weekend. And this at a UN summit this weekend, the U.S., Europe, other leading nations as well reached an agreement to triple their financing for climate change projects in the developing world to $300 billion by 2035. This pledge comes after President-elect Trump has vowed to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement, something President Biden had joined by executive order back in 2021. And this, Israel says a rabbi who went missing in the United Arab Emirates Thursday has been found, and he was murdered in a, quote, heinous anti-Semitic incident. Israel is vowing to seek justice for his killers. In a moment, we'll talk with incoming National Security Advisor Congressman Mike Waltz. But first, let's turn to Bryan Llenas for the latest on the Trump transition. He is in West Palm Beach today. Hi, Bryan.
Hi, Jillian. Well, less than 3 weeks after winning re-election, President-elect Trump has chosen all of his cabinet secretaries, including the man tasked with following through on his tariffs plan. President-elect Trump tapping billionaire hedge fund manager Scott Bessent as his pick for Treasury Secretary. As the administration's top economic official, Bessent would be tasked with implementing Trump's tax cuts and raising tariffs on foreign goods, a strategy he defends.
Donald Trump is a free trader at the end of the day, and it's a strategy, escalate to de-escalate.
The pick comes despite Elon Musk publicly criticizing Bessent as a business-as-usual choice. Trump's now completed picking his cabinet secretaries, tapping America First Policy Institute founder Brooke Rollins as his agriculture secretary, pro-union Republican Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer as his labor secretary, and Project 2025 co-author Russell Vought to lead the Office of Management and Budget. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance now taking meetings on Capitol Hill in an effort to ensure Trump's picks survive Senate confirmation. Sexual assault allegations have complicated the path for his defense secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth.
Appreciate all the support, and I look forward to a good process.
And forced former Congressman Matt Gaetz to drop out of the running as Attorney General. Just hours later, Trump choosing former Florida AG Pam Bondi as his replacement. Senate Republicans underscoring the importance of getting Trump's picks confirmed.
We're going to have to give him a lot of clear runway to get his agenda through. That first 100 days is going to be vitally important.
Now, other tough Senate confirmation hearings could include for Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Gillian?
Right, Bryan Llenas in West Palm Beach for us. Thank you. Let's go now to Alex Hogan with a look at the war in Gaza from on the ground. The incoming administration obviously is going to have to tackle that crisis as well as the war in Ukraine beginning day one. She's in Tel Aviv today. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Gillian. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressing confidence that the war could end as early as next year. We've heard former President Donald Trump say that he could end the war within 1 day. Well, Saturday, Zelensky notes that he believes the war will end faster when Trump takes office.
I also want to see the proposals of the new president of the United States of America. I think we will see these proposals in January, and I think we will have a plan to end this war.
For now, new threats of escalation. Russian President Vladimir Putin warning that Russia will start mass producing the hypersonic ballistic missile that it fired at Ukraine Thursday. Moscow says it fired the Oreshnik missile on a military facility in Dnipro in retaliation for Kyiv's use of U.S. and British long-range missiles deeper into Russia. Putin claims that several of these missiles fitted with conventional warheads could be just as devastating as a strike with nuclear weapons, and that U.S. air defense systems would not be able to stop it. European leaders this week sounding the alarm that this weapon changes the stakes of the war. NATO and Ukraine will hold emergency talks on this on Tuesday. Meanwhile, here in the Middle East, new fallout over the ICC arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as his former defense minister and one of the leaders of Hamas. The warrants accusations against Netanyahu include starvation, crimes against humanity in Gaza. President Joe Biden called it absurd, stressing that there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Now, this was the first time that a sitting leader of a major Western ally has been accused of war crimes by the court. And at least 20 people are dead and more than 60 are wounded after Israel's latest strike Saturday on a building in Beirut. That is according to officials in Lebanon. Now, according to a lot of the conversations that we're hearing and seeing, there are continued efforts to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. And U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin held talks with his counterpart on this just yesterday. Gillian.
All right, Alex Hogan in Tel Aviv for us today. Thank you. Joining us now is Florida Congressman and incoming National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
And I do have a clip of the incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. On Fox News, they never did anything about the lack of FBI background checks, so that clip is not on topic, although it is kind of disturbing, one of the things he says. That's the final Newsmaker clip number 12 coming up. I pretty much criticized that clip. I made one mistake. They did briefly mention Pete Hegseth having problems with a sexual assault allegation, although then they kind of like yada Matt Gaetz in there. So it was like Pete Hegseth having some problems with a sexual assault allegation, which is why Matt Gaetz withdrew, immediately replaced by Pam Bondi. Like that was like all in the middle there, which, you know, if you understand how memory works, and this is something they teach trial lawyers, you want to put the important stuff at the beginning and the end and try to hide the stuff you want people to forget in the middle, because there's something in memory called primacy and recency, which is like the first thing you hear and the last thing you hear are the things you remember the most. And so they kind of hide, and maybe that's why I forgot that they did briefly mention Pete Hegseth sexual assault. And then at the end, though, they mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., controversial, never explained why. And that's why I think it is the worst of the news summaries, the least journalistic. But, of course, that's kind of what we expect from Fox News as a propaganda outlet of the Republican Party anyway. Juxtapose it to NBC News Meet the Press here. Kristen Welker, I think, does a much better job and talking about Gaetz dropping out, mostly about Hegseth, and especially Tulsi Gabbard gives a lot more important information than you got in that whole Fox News Sunday news summary in less time over Here.
Good Sunday morning. President-elect Donald Trump has finished rolling out a pre-holiday flurry of cabinet picks, remaking the Justice Department, Pentagon, and the intelligence community with loyalists. On Tuesday, as a growing number of Republican senators demanded the release of a House ethics report into allegations former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz paid women for sex, including a 17-year-old in 2017, the president-elect denied he was reconsidering Gaetz.
Mr. President, are you reconsidering the nomination of Matt Gaetz?
No. But just 2 days later, Gaetz withdrew from consideration, though he continues to deny wrongdoing.
I was dealing with a politically motivated body. They had an axe to grind. So that was going to serve as at least enough of a basis to delay my confirmation as Attorney General.
Was this decision a surprise to you? No. I was surprised the timing of it. I figured it would go a little longer than this, but ultimately I think you can see the writing on the wall.
Now, hours after Gaetz dropped out, President-elect Trump named former two-term Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who served on Mr. Trump's defense team during his first impeachment trial instead. After Mr. Trump lost the 2020 election, Bondi amplified his false claims of election fraud.
As Eric Trump said, we are thrilled to have won Pennsylvania.
We have won Pennsylvania, and they're not going to take it away from us.
Now, Bondi has been a vocal critic of the criminal cases against Mr. Trump, as well as special counsel Jack Smith, who charged him in 2 federal cases.
The Department of Justice, the prosecutors will be prosecuted, the bad ones. The investigators will be investigated because the deep state, last term for President Trump, they were hiding in the shadows, but now they have a spotlight on them, and they can all be investigated, and the House needs to be cleaned out because now we know who most of them are.
According to the Washington Post, President-elect Trump plans to fire the team that worked with the special counsel. The press secretary for Mr. Trump's transition team responding, quote, President Trump campaigned on firing rogue bureaucrats who have engaged in the illegal weaponization of our American justice system, and the American people can expect he will deliver on that promise. A key question now that Gaetz has dropped out, will other Trump picks face more intense scrutiny, including his pick to lead the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth, who faces questions about sexual assault allegations, which he denies, and former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who made 2 secret visits to Syrian dictator Bashar Assad in 2017. She has also amplified Kremlin talking points, blaming the U.S. for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ambassador Nikki Haley weighing in.
This is not a place for a Russian, Iranian, Syrian, Chinese sympathizer. DNI has to analyze real threats. Are we comfortable with someone like that at the top of our national intelligence agencies?
Now, NBC News has learned that within hours of taking office, President-elect Trump plans to roll out a series of executive actions aligned with his campaign promises, including setting in motion the large-scale deportation of people living in the country illegally.
Those people who say they're going to stop us from what they're doing, they will not. We'll have no problem finding a place to detain these people. It's going to cost money, so we got to have the money to do it. But President Trump's going to do everything he can to make sure we have the funds to do this.
Mr. Trump and his allies disavowed the conservative policy blueprint Project 2025 during the campaign.
I don't know what the hell it is. It's Project 25. He's involved in Project. And then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. I have no idea what Project 2025 is. I've never read it, and I never will.
But with the campaign over, Trump's transition team is turning to Project 2025 to help staff the next administration, picking its co-author, Russell Vought, to lead the Office of Management and Budget, as he did in Mr. Trump's first term. Top Trump aides are praising the pick.
Russ Vought has been the guy for the last 4 years who's been developing the plan to take down the deep state. That's Russ. And he's going to be right there at OMB to execute that plan.
And joining me now is Republican Senator Eric Schmidt.
I'm going to have a clip of Eric Schmidt coming up as well, but that was a pretty good news summary from NBC News Meet the Press. I think they did a better job of explaining what happened with Matt Gaetz, certainly than Fox News did. The problems with Pam Bondi, I think even better than ABC did. not as good a job on Pete Hegseth as ABC did, just about the same as Fox News, just mentioned sexual assault allegation, but a lot better on Tulsi Gabbard than you saw from Fox News, of course. And they also spent time doing on NBC News, Meet the Press. They talked about how Trump distanced himself from the Project 2025 in the campaign, but now he's hiring this guy, Russ Vogt. Apparently his name is pronounced Vogt. I've heard people pronounce it Vought, and I kind of like that better because it's the evil corporation in that superhero parody show, The Boys, which I actually have watched and enjoyed. So I like to call him Vought, even though I believe it's pronounced Vogt. They did mention Russ Vogt over on the Fox News Sunday News Summary and him being from Project 2025, but they didn't show how it was different from what Trump said on the campaign. Now I'm going to go to the CBS News Face the Nation News Summary, where Margaret Brennan, this is almost like that anticipatory obedience they say happens when authoritarians come in, like, oh, always like say something nice. It's like Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski going to Mar-a-Lago. That happened this week, where they were like, apparently were scared they were going to be persecuted by the Trump administration, so they went and had a long conversation, and now they're like trying to be normalizers of Trump, or I don't know exactly. It's this anticipatory obedience where you like say nice things about dear leader so that he doesn't come after you, I guess. And that's kind of how Margaret Brennan starts off. CBS News poll, 59% of people approve of the Trump transition, which like is anyone but me really, and the small group of us who watch the news all the time, really paying attention. A lot of people I know who pay attention to the news have like taken a break since November 5th. It's just like all too much. I saw some of that in the live comments at the beginning of the show. People just having problems processing what's going on with the country, and I guess we'll see how bad it gets. Hopefully there'll be at least the House of Representatives taken back in 2 years, depending on how Trump does and how much of a backlash there is to what he does. And that might be the beginning of saving what institutions are left after a Trump administration. I couldn't really, that part, I'm still processing that part. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here that's right, I was about to show you CBS News Face the Nation, where Margaret Brennan begins with her anticipatory obedience. I, for one, welcome our insect overlords or whatever. And then they have their reporter apparently was hanging out with Jon Karl over at Mar-a-Lago. Her name is Nikole Killio, who also reports from Mar-a-Lago, kind of like Jonathan Karl did on ABC over in this clip.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. As we begin this holiday week, Americans are preparing to gather to give thanks for what has been and contemplate what's to come. Our latest CBS News poll shows that 59% of Americans approve of how President-elect Donald Trump is handling the presidential transition. Trump has kept up a steady drumbeat of staffing announcements from his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida. And that is where we find our Nikole Killio this morning with the latest.
After Saturday lunch with one of the senators who will vote on his cabinet picks, President-elect Donald Trump announced former domestic policy advisor Brooke Rollins for Agriculture Secretary. One of his most highly anticipated selections was Scott Bessent for Treasury. If confirmed, the 62-year-old investor would be the first openly gay secretary to lead it and responsible for quarterbacking Mr. Trump's proposed policies on taxes and tariffs.
The most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
A new CBS News poll shows a majority of Americans support imposing tariffs on imported goods, and more have an optimistic view of the economy since the election. Mr. Trump selected a pair of doctors to lead health agencies. Former Congressman David Weldon has promoted debunked anti-vaccine views and is being tapped to lead the Centers for Disease Control. Food and Drug Administration pick Martin McCary critiqued vaccine mandates during the COVID pandemic, and Project 2025 architect architect Russ Vought plans to reprise his role as White House budget director, despite Trump's disavowal of the conservative policy blueprint.
I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
Our polling also finds many of the president-elect's well-known designees have more support than opposition, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Pete Hegseth. The former Fox News host picked to lead the Pentagon is drawing scrutiny over allegations of sexual assault in a 2017 police report.
Did you sexually assault a woman in Monterey, California?
I have, as far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared.
While President-elect Trump has filled out most of his cabinet, a few economic positions remain up for grabs, including U.S. Trade Representative and Small Business Administrator. Margaret?
That's Nikole Killio in West Palm Beach, Florida. We go now to Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul.
Oh, and I don't have a Rand Paul clip. I have a Tammy Duckworth. I actually have two Tammy Duckworth clips, but it's all part of a series that you'll see. It's kind of all fits together, which is why I didn't take Rand Paul. But as usual, down in the video description under sources, if you follow the link from Face the Nation, it goes to the Face the Nation YouTube page where the entire episode is available to watch for free. Also, Meet the Press has the whole episode for free, and ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos. All three of those, there are links down in the video description if you actually want to watch that. I pretty much pre-criticized that clip. I forgot about the part where they also showed like more people than not support all these controversial nominees too, like Pete Hegseth, and they did talk a little bit more about his sexual assault allegations than the other news summaries, and they also talked about the anti-vaxxers a little more. They put Russ Vought in the context of Trump's promise not to implement Project 2025, so that was all good. And anyway, now I'm going to show the final news summary, just a little over a minute from Dana Bash on CNN's State of the Union over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the State of our Union is locked in. President-elect Donald Trump officially completed his list of cabinet secretary nominations in a flurry of announcements over the last 48 hours. Trump unveiled a number of new unconventional picks. Here's a look at the full list right now. It includes a pro-union former Republican congresswoman for the Labor Department, a Project 2025 co-author to lead the budget office. One of the most important jobs, Treasury Secretary, will go to billionaire investor Scott Bessent. But the made-for-TV cast of characters still needs to get past the Republican Senate, which has already doomed one nomination. Trump's picks for Health and Human Services, Secretary and Director of National Intelligence are under intense scrutiny, and his nominee for Defense Secretary is on defense, denying a sexual assault allegation. The fate of all these nominees rests in the hands of the new Republican Senate majority, which just elected its leaders for the next Congress. Here with me now is the newest member of the Republican leadership, James Lankford of Oklahoma.
And I don't have a James Lankford clip because I have a Tammy Duckworth clip and a Markwayne Mullin clip from CNN's State of the Union. That was only a little over a minute. They got in Pete Hegseth's sexual assault allegation and controversies about Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. They mentioned Russ Vought and Project 2025. They're missing a lot of detail from all the other news summaries, but also so much shorter. So I guess you can give them a little leeway on that. Now I'm going to get to the newsmaker clips. The first clip I want to show you is what I think bad cross-examination from Kristen Welker on NBC News' Meet the Press. She had on Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri and specifically asked him about the lack of background checks. And he says, oh, well, the Senate's still going to ask questions or do our investigation, but that's a lot different than having the FBI do a full background check. Doesn't ask about, how FBI background checks mean that the people who they talk to, it's a crime if they lie to the FBI agent, and it's a lot more thorough than what he's talking about, but no follow-up from Kristen Welker on it, which I thought was a mistake over in this less than 1 minute clip over
You're a yes on Tulsi Gabbard, Senator, just to be clear?
I'm a yes on Pam Bondi. I'm a yes on Pete Hegseth. I'm a yes on Tulsi Gabbard. Absolutely.
Okay, well, there you have it. Let me zoom out a little bit. The Trump transition team has so far bypassed traditional background checks for his cabinet picks. Are you confident that all of Mr. Trump's picks will be fully and properly vetted before this confirmation process?
I am, and I think that's an important role of the United States Senate, right? It's a uniquely American institution for a bunch of reasons. We have the role of advice and consent, and as we go through, whether it's armed services or judiciary, any of the committees that are going to be vetting these candidates for these positions, absolutely, it's going to be thorough. It should be. We should ask tough questions. That's part of the process. So I have full confidence that that's exactly what we're going to have moving forward.
All right, let's do a little bit of foreign policy now.
Ask tough questions. That's not the same thing as the FBI going and like talking to a bunch of people you've known since you were in college or whatever, which is what they're supposed to do. Didn't do when it came to Brett Kavanaugh, but I'm not going to go off on that tangent again. And that's something that Senator Bill Hagerty understands, having gone through the background checks. He's asked about the lack of background checks by Jonathan Karl on ABC, and well, let's see if Jonathan Karl does a better job than Kristen Welker over here.
Your colleague, Senator Joni Ernst, Republican of Iowa, of course, member of the Armed Services Committee, has said that she would like to see and a combat veteran herself, she would like to see an FBI background check that would be helpful of Pete Hegseth. As you know, there haven't been FBI background checks for any of these nominees. Do you agree with her, though, that this should happen before we get to confirmation votes?
I don't think the American public cares who does the background checks. What the American public cares about is to see the mandate that they voted in delivered upon. We need to get to work. Again, making our military stronger is absolutely critical, and I think we're looking at a chance to do this. If you look at the cabinet that's in place right now, the worst that we've ever seen. Alejandro Mayorkas has got to go down as the worst cabinet secretary in history. If you think about the failures on his watch, the failures of FEMA, if you think about what's happened at our southern border, the invasion that's happened there, the murder of Laken Riley, the Secret Service failures, we have to get competent people into office. Lloyd Austin overseeing Afghanistan. What a debacle that was. No one has been held to account by the Biden administration. The American public is ready to hold these people to account now and replace them with a new team.
So are you saying you don't care about FBI background checks? Should we just do away with them? That you can go ahead and not do this for? It's been standard practice, as you know, for a long time. But you're saying do away with it?
Certainly, John. I've been through it myself. I've been through confirmation as well. They need to do these checks expeditiously. The FBI, I think the American public's got great concerns about how weaponized it's become. They need to get on with this. We'll get this done.
I understand you've also had some concerns about Hegseth's view on women in combat.
So yeah, then he switches to a different topic, and it's hard to understand what Senator Hagerty was even saying there. Then did he say, yes, he does want background checks, we'll get on with this, but he also at one point says, well, the American people don't really trust the FBI. Maybe he's talking about the private investigator background checks that the Trump transition team is doing. I mean, he actually, I think, hit upon one of the reasons they're not doing FBI background checks, because Trump doesn't trust the FBI, at least as I was saying, even though he appointed the director of the FBI. FBI directors are supposed to have 10-year terms as part of the reforms after J. Edgar Hoover was there forever and amassed all this power and all this compromise or, blackmail information on all these cultural and political figures and wiretapped MLK and RFK and, the whole thing with the Kennedys and the mafia. And anyway, so as one of the reforms, the FBI director is supposed to have a 10-year term, and so that it's nonpartisan, it just expires in some other presidential administration. Technically, the president can fire the director of FBI, which is what Trump did when he came in, fired James Comey, replaced him with Christopher Wray, whose 10-year term is not up, but is a Trump appointee who apparently, if you listen to Fox News, they're just assuming he's going to fire the FBI director again, forgetting about that whole, reform to stop the FBI director from being partisan. And that's like a whole part of this that nobody's even really covering. And I think it's part of why there aren't any FBI background checks on the Trump nominees. And Jonathan Karl also didn't follow up on that, or how it's a crime to lie to the FBI, like I was saying. And so not good. But at least he mentioned it. And they did on NBC News' Meet the Press as well. On CNN State of the Union, they didn't really mention the lack of FBI background checks. It kind of came up when Dana Bash was talking to Senator Markwayne Mullin about something Tammy Duckworth said earlier in the program. So I'm going to show you what Tammy Duckworth said earlier in the program about Tulsi Gabbard being like compromised and someone who seems to be like a knee-jerk supporter of Putin. Well, I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Okay, let's turn to the Democratic Congresswoman, former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who the president-elect tapped to serve as Director of National Intelligence. She's a critic of U.S. intelligence operations. She has promoted Russian propaganda. Your fellow Democrat, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, called her, quote, likely a Russian asset. Now, you and Tulsi Gabbard are both veterans. You served with her in the House. What do you think of her?
Well, I think she's compromised. I think by going to Syria and basically backing, a brutal dictator there, Russian-controlled media called her a Russian asset. So I do think that we have a real deep concern whether or not she's a compromised person, and frankly, the U.S. Intelligence Committee, the U.S. intelligence community has identified her as having troubling relationships with America's foes, and so my worry is that she couldn't pass a background check.
So, you are a Democrat. You are in the minority now in the United States Senate. If she can find the votes among Republicans likely to get confirmed, it sounds like that would worry you to have her in that job.
Very much so. She has no intelligence background whatsoever. When she was in Iraq, she was a medical records clerk E4, below the rank of sergeant. Her second deployment was actually to Kuwaiti Naval Base, where she only spent 3 months training the Kuwaiti military. So, and I don't know of any intelligence work that she has done. So she is, in terms of the intelligence community, very unqualified. Plus, she is potentially compromised and could be, and there are questions about whether or not she is now a Russian asset.
You believe that she could be a Russian asset?
I think that she is someone who is wholly backing and supportive of Putin, and I worry that she will not have America's best interest at heart.
I want to just quickly, because you've said about several of the nominees that they're not qualified, but I just want to kind of give the perspective of Donald Trump and the people who put him in, which is he wants to put people in who are disruptors.
There's a little bit of that anticipatory obedience. Well, but it makes sense for, if you're talking to a Democrat, to try to get them to respond to the perspective of a Trump supporter, because that is just confrontational journalism. But there you saw Tammy Duckworth talking about she didn't come right out and say that she was a Russian asset, but she thought that she was wholly supportive of Putin. And some people think that she's compromised or whatever. And, I'm going to get to how Senator Markwayne Mullin responded to that. And then Dana Bash briefly brings up the FBI as a possible source to resolve their difference. But I did see in the live comments during that clip, here's this. I see this talking point on Fox News all the time, and it makes no sense whatsoever. Here it is. It's from user Jenkins. It's not hard to see that the FBI was weaponized. They blocked the investigation and lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and pushed social media to shadow ban the story. Pushed social media to shadow ban the story? You mean during the 2020 election? That's when supposedly the weaponized FBI pushed, the social media to shadow ban the story. There is some that they did talk to social media about certain things, but the point about during the 2020 election is that FBI, who was in charge of the FBI then? Oh, Christopher Wray, the guy I was just talking about, the guy appointed by Trump. Oh, who was president? Who was president at that time? Also, Donald J. Trump, when supposedly the federal government was pushing social media to about the Hunter laptop story. Well, that's Trump's FBI. So much is it Trump's FBI that he fired James Comey and appointed Christopher Wray to oversee the FBI. So if the FBI was weaponized during the 2020 election, that's Trump's FBI. That's all I wanted to point out about that comment. And now I'm going to show you Senator Markwayne Mullin's response to what Tammy Duckworth just said over here.
We have a lot to get to, but I know you listened to what Senator Duckworth said in describing Donald Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She called her compromised, someone who is wholly backing and supportive of Putin. What do you make of that?
I think it's dangerous. Tammy, I got a lot of respect for Tammy, and I've known her for years. We served together in the House. But for her to say ridiculous and outright dangerous words like that is wrong. You got to keep in mind, Tulsi Gabbard is still Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army. She commands the reserve unit here in Oklahoma and Missouri. If she was compromised, if she wasn't able to pass a background check, if she wasn't able to do her job, she still wouldn't be in the Army. And so Tammy is absolutely dead wrong on this, and she should retract those words. That's the most dangerous thing she could say, is that a United States Lieutenant Colonel and the United States Army is compromised and is an asset of Russia. It's actually sad to hear her say that. When I heard her say that, I thought, I wonder if this is political, because she's upset that Tulsi Gabbard left the Democrat Party because they went woke. Because I know they actually got along when they were in the House, and she knows Tulsi Gabbard. She knows her heart. She has a heart to serve. And so I think that's probably more politically motivated than it actually has any truth to it at all.
Can I just ask you to follow up on that? Obviously, you're close with Tulsi Gabbard, and I totally understand your reaction.
I am.
Does any part of you want to see what either the FBI or the intelligence community, if they have a file on her, what it says?
Well, if they do have a file on her, we'll obviously see it. The thing is they don't have a file on her. What she did as a member of Congress was not out of line for her to do that. She had the right to travel. It was open. It was well documented what she was traveling for, and that was a full stop. She was a member of Congress when she did that. Now, people can make more out of it if they want to, but it wasn't hidden. It was in the spotlight. And keep in mind, she's ran for president since then. She also came back and served in Congress since then. So, and she's went through classified briefings since then. So there's no document, there's no background there for her to see, for anyone to see. She is a true patriot of the United States, and there's no reason why the Democrats are going after her other than the fact they're upset that she left their woke party.
Let's turn to Donald Trump's nominee for Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. As you well know, he's been accused of sexually assaulting a woman in 2017. He says it was a consensual encounter. And you argued that a police report that came out this week showed there were just two people flirting with each other. But I want to just make sure our viewers know what that report said, that the woman said that when she tried to leave Hegseth's hotel room, he blocked the door, ended up on top of her and performed a sexual act. She also said that she, quote, remembered saying no to a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
Dana, if we're going to get into that, let's talk about the whole police report. Now, I know you read it, and I have definitely read it. First of all, the police report, if you look at it, it's very clear that what Pete was saying and what his attorney was saying was accurate. There was no case here. He was falsely accused. If you go back and you read the report, there was 2 eyewitnesses said that she was being...
Oh, that she was being aggressive. I actually didn't mean to play it that long, but I wanted to because you're going to see Senator Tammy Duckworth respond to the two people flirting. If you saw a lot of the stuff in the police report, and I'm not even sure that the witnesses who say that she was being aggressive necessarily uh, refute what this woman in Monterey says Pete Hegseth did to her, and I'll get to that in a minute because I'm going to show Tammy Duckworth responding to the two people flirting thing on it over on Face the Nation. Uh, but I thought Dana Bash, she asked that question about would you like to see the FBI file on Tulsi Gabbard and let Markwayne Mullin get away with saying, oh, well, I don't think there is a file without ever bringing up well, what about FBI background checks? Maybe there should be a background check on Tulsi Gabbard. Wouldn't you like to see that? But that question never got asked. And Markwayne Mullin, whenever I see him, I was saying last week how I think of him getting in that argument in the Senate hearing with the head of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien. You stand your butt up. No, you stand your butt up. And I'm just glad he didn't tell Senator Tammy Duckworth that she should stand her butt up, because that would have been terrible. So I'm now going to show Senator Tammy Duckworth going giving a response on a different CBS News Face the Nation program on what Markwayne Mullin said about two people flirting Pete Hegseth, and then you get a little bit of what Tammy Duckworth thinks of Pete Hegseth in the penultimate newsmaker clip I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over.
The question of character has also come up in regard to this leadership role. Mr. Hegseth has acknowledged that he paid a woman back in 2017 to quiet her accusations of sexual assault. He claims it was consensual sex. I'm sure you've read that Monterey police report, as we did here. It refers to the offense code as, quote, rape victim unconscious of the nature of the act. It details both the accusers and Hegseth's version of events. Here's what Senator Markwayne Mullin said it shows. Two people flirting with each other. Is the committee going to speak with the victim to ask if this was a misunderstanding?
Well, that will be the decision of the Republican chairman of the committee next year. I hope that we will, but I suspect that they again will roll over for Mr. Trump. Frankly, I will raise those questions. Remember that we've just fought over a decade of fights and overhauled the military and its treatment of military sexual trauma. It's frankly an insult and really troubling that Mr. Trump would nominate someone who has admitted that he's paid off a victim who has claimed rape allegations against him. This is not the kind of person you want to lead the Department of Defense.
To move to a vote you took this past week, you've said you have...
So yeah, and that goes to a vote about sending arms to Israel. But I just wanted to show Tammy Duckworth giving that response and also pointing out how it, with so many Trump nominees having sexual assault allegations, including RFK Jr. with supposedly groped the babysitter or something. So we need a background check on that. But and then Trump himself with so many sexual assault allegations. It's important to remember what Senator Tammy Duckworth said there, that in the Defense Department, it's particularly important because there is a whole history of problems with sexual assaults in the military, and to have the head of the Department of Defense also have those same problems would be a big setback to at least the spirit of the reforms they've tried to institute over the last several years. And now I'm going to get to the final newsmaker clip. I forgot to mention Face the Nation never really talked about the background checks, FBI background checks not being done. So that's why I had to take a clip that was off topic. And that's also true, as you would expect, from Fox News Sunday. I want to show the incoming National Security Advisor for the Trump administration, former member of Congress Mike Waltz, answering a fairly innocuous question, what are your priorities in the NSA, the National Security Council in the White House now that you're the incoming National Security Advisor? And in the middle of his answer, he says something that's kind of disturbing about, should Trump modify himself for, the position of president, or should everything else modify around him? The disturbing answer in the final newsmaker clip over here.
Ask you about the NSC, the National Security Council in particular, which you are about to helm. In any given administration, it tends to have between a couple of hundred, maybe 400 officials on the staff. Not very big, but has an outsized role in policy making in Washington, determining U.S. foreign policy across the globe. What's your, coming in on January 20th, what is your number one top policy proposal that you're going to be focused on?
Well, I'll just tell you from my approach. President Trump has a mandate to execute these policies that he has outlined and to continue the great policies he had in his first term. I think in the past, too many people have tried to kind of conform the system or have tried to kind of conform him to the system. I'm going to conform the system to the best I can, to his style, to his decisions, and to his mandate, number one. Number two, for example, we were just talking about the Middle East. Well, a key component of that are Americans being held hostage, and we need to start imposing costs for those that hold hostages rather than reacting and seeing benefit. And number three, the border, the Western Hemisphere, working with that team to get it under control. The cartels need to be on notice. Mexico and our partners have to take some ownership here. And then broadly in the Western Hemisphere, we have the energy, the food supply, the critical minerals that we need to keep our economy the most powerful it is in the world. And finally, on China, that is going to be much more of a conversation about the strength of our economy, the strength of our markets, how to bring those supply chains back home, from critical minerals to energy to pharmaceuticals in that competition. And President Trump is going to lead the way on all of those issues.
Well, sir, we certainly look forward to seeing you at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue come the new year. Thank you for taking time with us, your first Sunday show interview since the nomination. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gillian.
So, yeah, no follow-up question from Fox News there when the incoming national security advisor says, no, we're going to change the government to fit Trump's impulses, whims, desires, and plans rather than trying to get him to understand what he hasn't been seeing for the last 4 years, bring him up to speed, try to give him good advice. A lot of that stuff that Mike Waltz said is pretty standard Republican talking points, but that whole, it almost raises the question for me, like, at the end of these 4 years, what do you think? Is Trump going to be more changed by his 4 years as president, or is the U.S. government going to be more changed by Trump's 4 years as president? Who's going to modify more for whom? And I don't know, it's kind of a scary question to think about. I guess we'll find out during the next 4 years. That's the last of my newsmaker clips. I'm going to finish up now, be back next Monday, and for 8 more Mondays through Monday, January 20th, 2025, when I'll do the last regularly scheduled weekly live stream. I may do some more live streams, some other things. I'll talk about that some more in the next 8 weeks, but I do like to end the program with the bonus Cheech and Chong, the kittens clip. You saw Chong at the beginning of the program live. Well, here's a clip of both Cheech and Chong together. They like to wrestle, they like to battle. I thought this battle was a little kind of cute to finish up the show over here. So yeah, that was kind of fun. I hope you enjoyed that clip. The rest of the clips I picked out for you, the time and effort I put into that, and adding my political commentary and media criticism to the show. I'll be back next Monday, or maybe I'll have some other reason to upload a video during the week if, I guess it's Thanksgiving week. But until next Monday, or until I have some other reason to upload a video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.